But underneath all of what we've said are brain structures that need to be addressed. Just wanting and thinking without really kind of going down to the nitty gritty of your brain is not going to work. That's why often people go to therapy for years and they're still where they were. We need to literally change the biological, how your brain functions, use the neuroplasticity to our advantage whenever possible. So this can be a permanent change, not just temporary change of behavior.
Well, welcome back, everyone. My name is Ruby Powers, your host of Power Up Your Practice. And today I have a really great guest for us, Dominika Staniewicz, your brain coach, D. And today we're going to be talking a lot about how entrepreneurs navigate ADHD, and maybe you don't have it, but you think you do, and a whole lot of things under that topic. But she's a TEDx speaker from just recently, October 2025, Why Female Brains Are Built for Leadership. She's a speaker at PMI Ohio's 50th anniversary, Rewiring the Brain for Health and Peak Performance, and certified brain health coach, and award-winning entrepreneur and author of The Magic of Dreaming Big, Acting Small, and Achieving Success. And 5,000 hours of global stages, sharing platforms with a lot of large, big name individuals, and focusing on neuroscience-based performance, ADHD awareness, and mental resilience for entrepreneurs and leaders. So, Dominika, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I am super excited to talk about one of my favorite topics.
Awesome. Well, I just want to say that I've never been tested for it. So I don't know, maybe but I went I ran for office one time, and my campaign manager was like, "Do you have ADHD?" And I was just like, I don't know. And but I'm really looking forward to our conversation, because I think we were saying before we started, like, some people have it, some people don't, some people it's bad habits. That's just how they survived, and went through. I won't speak for you, but like, I mean, I'm really curious because then fast forward, I was working on my book, my second book, and somewhere along the way, I realized, like, a lot of entrepreneurs, they can't sit still. They're doing a lot of different things. They're juggling. It's like it's a blessing and a curse at the same time. And but part of me being able to write books was that I had to stay focused, and I had to sit still. And so and some of the things as a lawyer, I have to be able to do that, and some things as an entrepreneur, anyway. So I'm intrigued by this conversation, and I've also, before I let you take the stage, I've also heard people say that they found out that they had it because their kid was diagnosed with it, and they were underdiagnosed through their whole life, or whatever the terminology is. And anyway, so where should we go from here? I'm very intrigued.
Okay. So first of all, thank you for having me. And your experience is not separated from everybody else. A lot of adults do get diagnosed when they see something in their kids. And it is true that the ADHD per se and ADD is absolutely real. It is something we can literally see on fMRIs and SPECT scans in the brain. So it's absolutely real. And that's where the challenge starts. So first thing I want to bring to everybody's attention is the fact that if you have a lot of energy and you like doing 55,000 things at one time, doesn't mean you have ADHD. Okay. If you have scattered brain, it doesn't mean you have ADHD. If you have tunnel vision, it doesn't mean you have ADHD. If you like to withdraw and are more introverted, and you do not understand certain concepts, or you kind of block the environment out, it doesn't mean you have ADHD. And if you have poor attention span, it does not mean you have ADHD. It can be an ADHD symptom, but it also can be just lack of skills. And first thing, before anybody gets diagnosed, and this is not the typical process, that's why elite brain health coaching and what we do is a little bit different. Before we send you for an ADHD, I'm just going to give you a few tips that everybody can do. First, check your blood work. See, if you
Mm,
are low iron, low ferritin, low D3, low omegas, your brain is not at optimum state, which means it's going to struggle. And struggling can look like scattered brain, lack of concentration, problem sleeping, and all other symptoms. Two, check hearing. Because very often, especially in kids, when kids cannot hear, they start fidgeting and they feel uncomfortable and they get noisy because they cannot hear properly. So, checking hearing before ADHD is crucial. Most people don't do that. Next, what you could do and you should do is check for Arlene syndrome. So your brain, processes color, the light comes in, and sometimes your brain is not able to process one color, which creates stress in the brain, and then the wiring
mm,
of the brain goes different way. It's such an easy fix, and that shows up especially with people if you have sensitivity to light, sensitivity to sound, and you've been
mm,
potentially diagnosed as dyslexic. You might not be. It might be
mm,
Irlen syndrome, and those people often have anxiety and stress related issues. So, if any of that could be a possibility, go check for Arlene syndrome. It's fixed very simply with glasses, and most of those symptoms will subside within a month from wearing those glasses. They're with a special color. They check which color your brain is not processing and calms down the nervous system. Very simple thing to do. Then, before you go get with ADHD, you got to check if your primitive reflexes have been integrated properly. And most people don't talk about this, but the truth is, in medical schools, they study that for about 3, 4 hours. People who have dedicated their life with helping young and adults and kids with problems, attention deficit issues, and everything else that we associate with ADHD have found that every person, I mean, every person that is diagnosed with ADHD is actually doesn't have those primitive reflexes integrated. So, what are those? There are
mm,
12 of them. We all have them when we're born, and they're supposed to integrate into our brain for within about 6 months to 1 year. And if they're not, then you have attention deficit issues, you have memory issues, you have fidgeting, you have explosive personality. There's so many of those. Why? Because your brain didn't integrate them. So the wiring, the neural pathways didn't form correctly. And it's like a barrier. So brain goes, there's a barrier. So let me go around and do it the other way around. So that's why the behaviors change when you reintegrate them. And that's physical exercise with experts, with lasers, with stimulating the brain, right, left side. There's the whole protocol for it. A lot of kids stop having ADHD like symptoms.
mm,
So I'm not saying ADHD doesn't exist, but there's a whole list of things. And this is just three that I've mentioned. There's about 9, 10 things you should do before. Then there's the cultural aspect. If you were living in a hectic household, you learned that you have to do a lot of things at one time, and you've
mhm,
never learned the skills to separate that. So you will be proceeding and acting the same way. And to the outside world, it will look like ADHD. Now, from studies, we know from neuroscience studies that multitasking is horrible for your brain and it actually lowers your performance. So reteaching yourself behaviors, which is very possible. See, we have something called neuroplasticity, allows us to retrain our brain. And that will create new behaviors. That's what coaches are for. That's what therapists are for. People like me and other experts who specialize in looking at you. Supplements is another way before you go on medication, because ADHD sometimes it is lack of too much dopamine or lack of dopamine or serotonin and processing of those. And then we have to look at what you're eating, because if you're drinking, guess what? You might have ADHD like symptoms. That is part of that. And then on top of this, this approach is not new. If you go to Europe, this is the approach they also kind of cultivate in Europe. If you have those behavioral issues, memory, feelings, and everything else that's in the ADHD realm, first, you have lifestyle changes that you have to do and practice and change your behaviors, change style of eating, how much time you're on your phone, how much time on your screen,
mm,
et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. When all of those are met, and worked on, and there's no change, that's when we go, let's scan the brain and let's see if there is real changes ADHD that require medication, because that might be the case. But medication should always be the last resort or the saving element, life saving. So if they're, kicking you out of the fifth job and you cannot keep a job, or, everybody is complaining and your kid is going to be kicked out of fifth school, sixth school, yes, don't start with this approach. Go first for medication and then go back and check for everything, because this does take time. But imagine you could have a life the way you want to without the medication. And then there's the other side. Some ADHD symptoms are your superpower. And sometimes you don't want to get rid of them. They're helping you. So maybe just leave those alone and work on those that are, kind of preventing you from going where you want to go. So that's just the general part.
Wow, that's can you spell the syndrome that you were saying about the color?
Irene. IRIEN.
Okay. Okay.
It's her syndrome. You can go. They have websites. I don't do that. I'm not certified, but this is one of the things I ask people to do when I coach them, because we need to eliminate absolutely everything before I go, okay, this is not a coaching job. This is now a psychiatrist job. We need to scan your brain. We need to look at which out of 7 types of ADHD do you have, because not every type is the same. And then they will adjust, first start with supplements, then we go into medication.
When you say scan the brain, is that like an MRI or is there something more simple?
It's SPECT scan, so single photon emission. It's like an fMRI. It's just a little bit different. And now we have mapped how ADHD looks like. Funny enough, if you don't work on your brain, if you don't use the neuroplasticity to your advantage to work on the things we spoke about, you may still have visible symptoms in the brain, how it functions. For example, your amygdala, right, can be overactive, or there is type 6 ADHD, which is overactive, and it looks like a ring of fire. It has the same symptoms as PTSD. So it is extremely hard to work. But first, we need to get everything out of the way, work on the brain. And if that does not bring solutions that we want and the results we want, that's when it goes scan the brain. Okay, it's still there. Nothing has changed, right? No improvement. This is the time to go and get some medication or start with supplements, which often work good enough. And in some cases, you do need Ritalin or other medication, but that is done by psychiatrists and doctors when they look at everything.
You said something about if you grew up in a home that was chaotic. I don't know exact words, but I've done some research. Isn't there some type of correlation? It doesn't mean that like trauma equals ADHD, but like that sort of that chaotic environment and then the survival and the way that you learn to cope. And could you elaborate a little bit on that?
Okay. Your brain is like this big sponge. It sucks everything in without question. And that's the challenge. Whatever the young brain sees, about age of 7, it ends, and it starts then decipher what is important to it, what's not. But it sucks everything in. And when it creates a neural pathway, which is at the beginning very, very thin, right? You need repetitiveness for something to become a pattern and something to become a default behavior. It goes, oh, this is how we react. Oh, this is what we do. Oh, this is how I'm supposed to be. It has no questioning, no reasoning. And the prefrontal cortex is so underdeveloped. It is there. It's just not working as it should be. So it's not questioning. It's not analyzing. It is copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste. So if you, for example, ADHD type 3, for example, is very common in kids who had parents or grandparents that were alcoholics.
Oh,
so it can be passed down, right? So the development is different. Now, it doesn't mean if your parents or grandparents are, because you're going to have ADHD. Correlation does not always equal causation, right? It's a possibility. It's much more prominent. It's much more often. And with genes and with gene expression, all of that plays a role. Your environment plays a role. So if you're, for example, in a household which keeps you in a state of fear permanently
Mm.
because of beating, screaming, alcoholism, or anything that puts you in danger, you are in a permanent fight or flight state. And your
Mm-hmm.
amygdala is overacting, and your brain creates that as a default, which then influences default mode network and other networks in the brain that will act accordingly. Now, it doesn't mean it's going to stay like this. The beauty of the brain, unless you don't have half of it, your brain can rewire. Your brain
Mm.
can change. It is not true that we stop changing and our brain stops functioning with this beautiful neuroplasticity when we turn 28, 30 for men and 25 for women. That's not true. Your brain rewires your whole life, but it requires more work because those pathways in your brain are just more stable and they're like, I'm going to keep it that way. So you need a decision on your side and choose to make the change. That's very important. Or highly significant emotional event, which I don't wish for most people unless you're getting married and that's going to be the one and it's the love of your life, because most other highly significant emotional events are not pleasant.
um, so like I think we sort of said that it could be like a strength and then whatever you have and then you might not want to get rid of it. Like what I've sort of seen in entrepreneurs is that they're sort of always on the move. They sort of can do something and then they need to keep, I don't know, they keep moving. But it also could be that they could struggle with consistency potentially. And but I mean, I'm not going to put them all in one bucket. Like they're different.
We
But
all
like
struggle
what?
with something.
Yeah, yeah. I guess what are some of the traits that you see in entrepreneurs that maybe don't have ADHD, but it might be similar looking, so they might be confused.
Anxiety. Anxiety.
Okay.
And especially with lawyers and people who work with risk management. It's a plague. I don't know many lawyers and people working with risk management who are not on medication.
Huh.
But truth is that none of them were ever taught healthy coping skills. They don't have
Oh,
coping habits. They don't have
mm,
brain
yeah.
healthy food. They cope the way they saw this is how we act. This is what we're going to do because everybody else does it. The fact that everybody else does it doesn't mean it's the right thing to do.
That's a really good point. And I think even in my like law class, and I'm bringing in guests, and we're sort of like challenging the status quo of like just because it's always been done this way doesn't mean we have to do it. And um, and to lean into healthier habits on having that balance and not and preventing burnout and protecting our mental energy and our boundaries in this space because it's so much responsibility. So,
Absolutely. And it's a very heavy emotional job that you're doing. I mean, that depends maybe in which part of the law you are in, but still, this is not an easy, chill job per se that would help the healthy habits. I mean, I don't know how about you, but those that I know, I don't know any abstinent lawyers.
hmm,
That's a
yeah.
challenge.
Well, and I think we're also trying to change that too, where um, not everything has to revolve around alcohol, and we can do other things. And I have friends who don't drink at all, and and I keep those friends in mind of like how when we're creating events, like need to have mocktails, or we should try to find something that doesn't like all go to the bar, and I like that type of thing. And those are some of the things that we talk about. Like I think about with my students too about just how that just how can we change that culture. But I agree with you about the coping mechanisms. So my kids went to a local elementary school, and I was so impressed with them because the kids were learning coping mechanisms like breathing and sort of calming down and being aware of themselves like really early on. And I was like, I didn't learn any of that stuff, like I was just like, yes, like that's the stuff because you need to be aware when you're lashing out and you're having, just is you have to be able to control your emotions and like, it really is a lot about that self-regulation and just being aware. But I mean, what are some of the things that we can do to be more aware of our and self-regulation so that we can be, learn better habits, I guess you could say.
Oh gosh. I mean, do we have like 5
No, we
days
don't.
of training?
Top tips.
So one of the top tips I would say is understanding what happens in your body, because your body will give you. So there's this thing that I teach everybody. As you think, so you feel. As you feel, so you do. As you do, so you have. And it's a pattern and a process of chain reaction. So it would be great if we would catch the thought that creates emotions. Every thought is connected to chemicals in your brain, and your brain goes, this thought connected to these chemicals, boom, dump, right? So changing your thought would be great. That takes practice, and that's what coaches are for, psychologists and everybody else. But if you are not self-aware enough, maybe how you feel. And then the question is, where do you feel? Stress always comes with tight chest, always, or tight stomach. It doesn't work any other way. Why? Because it's a biochemical reaction. So we hack biology, your psychology of biology. So when you notice that, before you know you're upset, that's the moment say, I need to go to the restroom, I need to go to the bathroom, whatever. Leave and bring your body back to full breathing. Because guess what? When you're stressed, you have shallow breathing. When you have shallow breathing, right? It's a biological pattern.
Now, when I go to Pilates and they're like, breathe in, breathe out, exhale, and I like start yawning because and then I think it's because I've been oxygen deprived because I'm a shallow breather. Oh, that's a problem. Anyway.
So there's a study, and they got nominated twice for a Nobel Prize, and it's called Heart Math Institute.
I've heard of that.
Yes. So it shows how your heart controls the beat and how it speaks to the brain. And that's why when you slow down your heart, you actually slow down. You do it with the breathing to slow down your heart, and that changes your brain waves. So there is plenty of science behind it. It's not woo. I used to think it was woo until I read that book, and it was like, oh, wow, that's all connected like this. So that's one. Second one is your mental rehearsal. Now, this is something, and a stop technique. Mental rehearsal is something used by top athletes, the richest people in the world, as well as all the F-16 and jet fighters, people who are so well trained. And mental rehearsal is imagining a situation that you've experienced, bringing up the feeling that you usually have on purpose, and then creating a technique, being able to say, oh, I'm okay, right? That can be done. First of all, it has to be a physical change. So you have to stand up, move, or go away. You can pinch yourself. You can, do different things. And you practice that when it's not happening. So when it happens, it's already practiced enough, and the switch comes on, and you can use that technique, whatever you've practiced. It is a phenomenal way, and it's one of the best ways of cheating your brain and creating new behaviors. There's a really cool study, which I love. Unfortunately, it's not super effective, but it does work. They took people who would imagine that they're exercising really a lot, like doing crunches and stuff, and they measured their muscle mass. And then they took people who did the crunches and exercise really a lot, not imagined. Yet people who really exercise build more muscle mass. That's true. But they also found that people who didn't exercise, just imagine, also increased in muscle mass. The brain thought it was exercising. It created biological reactions that created muscle mass. It wasn't as extensive, but it still worked. Another one is creating your own scent. And this is something from the courses we have online, and not only. See, smell is the only thing that bypasses the logical function of the brain. So create unusual smell that you don't have in your environment, and then using that for mental rehearsal, practicing getting out of the stress, feeling, anxiety, whatever that might be, with a smell. So you create the feeling, you imagine that, how it's working, you get all upset, and then you smell and you move and you relax. There's a whole process to it. What it does, you can then carry the vial with you. And when
Oh,
it happens, you smell, and the brain automatically goes to the other state.
oh, wow. That's
There's
sort of like I have some candles in my office, and like when I want to relax, I just like light them. Yeah, but I don't smell them all the time. It's more of like a relaxing. So maybe I'm doing it
And you are.
inadvertently.
So it's like when
Yeah.
you think of your grandma's favorite food, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
you smell the smell in your head and you
Yeah.
automatically go, oh my God, this is so amazing. It's so great. And you start feeling it, but there's no smell, no nothing, but still brings in the feelings. So we can kind of pair that on purpose for you. And that's one of the methods. Besides, of course, breathing, imagining things. So imagine that your hands are over a warm bonfire or you're holding a warm tea. Does the
Mhm.
same thing for stress levels, because when you get upset, angry, anxiety, fear, stress, your hands get cold. So when you imagine you're holding a warm cup, when you imagine you're holding your hands over a bonfire, the warmth, it will automatically warm up your hands through the imagination, because the brain does not know the difference between reality and what you imagine, unfortunately, or fortunately, if we know how to use it to our advantage, and the stress will subside. There are plenty of neuroscience based methods that you can use just on the spot.
Isn't I feel like a lot of what you said is reminding me of is it coming becoming supernatural or supernatural from Joe Dispenza? Becoming supernatural. I feel like I've heard some similar things
I
from
mean,
that, and
Joe Dispenza is passionate about mind and thing. I'm
mhm,
more going Stanford way and
mm,
biological studies, PubMed education. And don't get me wrong, Joe Dispenza done a lot of great things for the world.
mhm,
For now, my research goes to, Dr. Huberman, who I absolutely love, Stanford studies, Harvard studies, PubMed, everything that's published and peer reviewed. And that's where it comes from. Dr. Daniel Amen, who trained me, right? He's a double board certified neuropsychiatrist. So I kind of try to stay in the realm until it's multiple times repeated studies before I
mhm,
speak on it. Don't get me wrong, he is onto something, because some of the results he's getting are insane and they are
mm,
repetitive, but they haven't been studied in a way that I would just go and blast it to the world. But I am watching, I'm very intrigued with what he's doing.
mm. Yeah. Well, I mean, this isn't my, normal my area of study. I've just been more of like loosely been reading of things, and I love all of what you're saying, because there's so much to the brain. It's so fascinating, and I think that's what's also so great about it too, is like once we sort of figure out how it works, then we can figure out how we can work to our advantage, and like you were saying, rewiring and things like that, because I feel like I've been focusing a lot on this last few years, and sort of some of the things I've been reading and focusing on. I even did a Reiki course, and I've been trying to focus on slowing down and breathing and being more mindful and grounded and everything. But I think that's where, being a business owner, a mom, a lawyer, an immigration attorney, at all of that. What, how, what would you suggest to entrepreneurs or people who are sort of challenged with a lot of things being thrown at them to protect their mental energy and avoiding burnout?
So the fact that something is thrown at you doesn't mean you have to respond. It's your
That's a
choice
good point.
to
It's true.
respond.
Yeah.
And some things are meaningless. You need to know your North Star. And I'm not saying about the goal. I'm saying, is this important enough for me to change my course, right? I have this question that I use also, and my clients also, especially entrepreneurs, is this going to get me closer to my goal if I do this? And if not, then it goes on the later pile. Um,
Hmm. I love that.
Plan yourself before you plan your work. Second of all, a job, a business you've built, it's just that. It's a job, a business you've built, and it can be sold. And guess what? There are other people who can do it too. So
Ooh.
Soon as
Don't say that.
I
Ah.
know, your baby. It's not an extension of you. And this is when we start working on identity. The
Right.
moment you link work with your identity, you're doomed.
Hmm.
You are not your work. You are not your
And
past.
I agree with everything you're saying there. And I even wrote about that in my book about like how lawyers we we have, I think, it worse than some other professions because we just sort of like entrenched with the our identity and our profession are intertwined so much that we don't even know where one ends and one begins because they're so intertwined. And so if someone were not to be able to practice one day, that it's some people question their self-worth or their identity. And I think we need to work on this as a profession, but I love what you're saying. And I think we need to lean into this as the truth and really reflect on it because sometimes people just like, well, we did this and I am a lawyer now and I have to do this forever, and no, you don't. You don't have to. I even tell my law students, and I don't know if law school likes me saying this, but like, you don't have to do this forever. You don't even have to do it. Like you need to know what you really want to do and figure that out.
And it doesn't have to be really your passion because sometimes we can just
Mm.
enjoy our job. It doesn't have to be your passion. Your passion can be somewhere else. The challenge with identity is the same thing that happens to moms where kids leave and they've been married for a long time. They've been moms for a long time. Their identity is a wife and a mom. The kids
Yeah.
leave and everything that was assigned to that, they're like, and I went through this. I was like, what do I do now? Like I have at least
Yeah.
8 hours more in a day. Okay, so what do I like doing? I don't know. I mean, I would buy this, but this is really not what I like eating. I used to buy this because my kids liked it. Right. And everything was about somebody. And I was like, okay. And the discovery was painful because detaching yourself from the typical things you do, it takes work. I got myself a coach. I work with a coach. It took me a year and a half to rediscover who am I
Wow.
without my kids, without a partner, without my typical life that I had for the last 20 odd years.
Mm.
So that being said, this is a challenge on every human who has missed the information that was probably never given to them that we are not our jobs. We are
Mm.
not our illnesses. And every time I say I'm a brain coach, I remember that I'm creating an identity. When you say
Mhm.
I'm a lawyer, this is what you identify. So
Mhm.
I often
Mhm.
try to flip that and say I work as a brain coach.
Mm.
It's not an I am statement. And it will separate
Yeah.
me and my identity.
I I agree. And I don't know. There's just I think we get so entrenched to this profession and then you add the entrepreneurialness and the law. It's like a double whammy. Um and it's so true. Like you don't have to take what's flung on you. And I think that goes a lot with like you said your true north and your boundaries.
This episode is sponsored by Candle AI, the legal email assistant that helps legal teams spend less time on client emails. You heard me right, spending less time on emails. Candle AI works with both Gmail and Outlook, so you don't have to learn a new tool. And then it connects with popular case management systems like Clio, Filevine, INSSoom, and more to come. It instantly shows you your case and the client details the moment you open a client email and right inside your inbox. Then that means less context switching and time spent jumping to different tabs to figure out what you need to respond. Candle can also draft context-aware responses to client emails and makes it easy to create, edit, and manage your email templates. If you want to save time and take back control of your inbox, check out Candle AI. I highly suggest it.
How do you suggest people who are sort of similar, I guess, in the same vein of questioning, but like who are trying to stay brain balanced while still juggling multiple roles? Like, I have a couple of companies and I'm mom and attorney and, I don't know, content creator and stuff like that. Like what do you suggest for people who are juggling a lot of different roles?
I love your question. And why, first question I would ask yourself is why is it
Uh-huh.
important to me to do all of it?
Mm.
What
Yeah.
would it mean if I drop few of these things?
Mm-hmm.
Who will I be without them? Because most of the time we do things either because we just kind of started and we don't know how to stop, or it has a significance of our value attached to it somewhere because we want to be perceived by somebody, or we perceive other people who do similar things as somebody.
Mm-hmm.
That's number one. Number two, as soon as we can, create opportunities to become an owner, not an operator. I know plenty of people who run 7, 10, 15, 20 different companies, and they finish work in 4 hours because they're an owner. They're not working in the business, they're working on the business.
Mm-hmm.
And the moment we detach ourselves from that, I am the only person who can do this, life becomes so much simple. I have 2 people on my team. I rarely even know when they're doing what. I don't care. As long as it happens on time, you do you. I don't think about it. So then I can create the checklist for ADHD. I can work with my client. I can go and speak on stage. I can meet with you. And then at a certain level, I start asking myself, okay, is meeting this person is going to benefit me individually or business wise? Because it's just a meeting for the sake of meeting, I will now say no because my time is precious. I can do something else. But that takes kind of, facing the mirror and going, okay, girl, who do I think I am if I stop doing 3 of these things? And I will not. What will happen? What will I do with my time? Who do I think I am if I will say, hey, that's too much. I don't want to do it. Does that mean I'm a loser? Does it mean I'm giving up? I'm not good enough? Whatever that is assigned into your world, whatever you created, because nothing has a meaning, literally nothing, unless you give it a meaning. So if you gave it, you can take it away.
That's really wise. I agree. And I think that's what a lot of people do is they just get it sort of like start something and they don't know how to stop it, or they set it and forget it. And that's why I often talk about like mission, vision, and goals at the beginning of a course or a retreat or something along those lines, because it's sort of back to like what's your true north and why are you doing what you're doing, and then anything that's not helping you accomplish those goals, or getting who you want to be, then is just extraneous and unnecessary, and you can drop those from your equation.
I think one important part of growing and kind of dropping things is remembering that we're human beings, not human doings.
Mm-hmm.
And you said, who do you want to be? It's not what you want to do. It's who do you
Mm-hmm.
want to be? And how does that person feel? How does that person perceive things? And would that person that you want to be feel, right? Would
Mm-hmm.
they really do all of those things and would they find value in it? And very often when we reverse those questions and be uncomfortable in those questions, we find out that we're doing whole loads of things that are just totally pointless and it's pleasing everybody else around us and we're just being drained.
Mm-hmm. And I think one thing that I've seen, is that sometimes like the habits that you might have learned that might not be healthy, but you get rewarded for, or you're deemed as successful, or you're encouraged by society or whatever, law, whatever, studying and doing all these things and building up your resume or whatever. Like at some point you have to that growth, you have to say like, is this what I really want? And am I, and who am I doing this for? And I think that having those moments of reflection on a regular basis are essential, because um I I don't know. I feel like sometimes it's painful going back to like the identity conversation, to shed aspects of your identity, or that change and who you become. Like you said, that abrupt change when your children left home. I mean, my son, he jokes with me. He's 4 years away from leaving, and he like says stuff like, when I leave the house or grow up or whatever, and he like, because he knows he want to get a rise out of me, and I'm like, oh, like I can't believe that's only 4 years from now. But yeah, that's true. Whenever I have like nobody wants anything from me, like for a couple of hours, I have like no idea what I'm supposed to do. I'm just like, I think I'm supposed to go to work or something. I don't know because it's so rare when you've been a caregiver and always taking care of solving other people's problems all the time.
Absolutely. And what you said is very important. The word supposed to. What am I supposed to do? You didn't say, what do I want to do?
Yeah, exactly.
And most of us live in the supposed to. They did a really cool study. They asked people what success is on social media. And everybody gave cars, millions, the whole shebang that we all see. And then they asked the same question outside of social media on one-on-one conversations. Do you realize that basically almost nobody gave the same definition? For most people, success was having a good family, going on vacation once in a while, enjoying my house and good food, and going to concerts once on. That was their success. See, loud voices are very dangerous. And one of the things I'm dreaming of teaching is how brain processes loud voices, because loud voices will create a belief in you and convince you that what you want is wrong. And you'll start convincing yourself that you want what they want, which is totally not in alignment with your identity, who you are, where you want to go. And going against that grid, because we hear this all the time, we think we're different. We think nobody is like that us. We think that everybody else is thinking also of millions. And I had this beautiful client of mine. We worked together on her identity, business, and a few other things at the same time, and brain health, and other struggles that she had with coping mechanisms. And when we got to one point, I'm like, okay, so let's define success. I think you're ready for this. And she was sitting there, she goes, I don't want $1 million business. I want my business to be at $500,000 a year. I'll be making 100,000 clean from my business, and I'll have enough time for my friends and family, and I'll enjoy my life. And I'm like, that's beautiful. Then that's exactly where we're going, because that is success. And the beautiful thing about what we decide what we want, it's not forever unless we die. So if, after living this beautiful life, comfortable life, because she saw people struggling at 100 million, at $1 million with their businesses where they would work all the time. She's like, I don't want a life like this. Right. So the way they lived, it wasn't the $1 million, it was the way they lived. But at this stage, she's like, this is what I want. I'm like, fantastic. And she goes, it feels weird because I'm supposed to want more. Are you really? According to what?
That's why when I chose the name for my book, Power Up Your Practice, it's create the law firm and the life you deserve. Because a lot of entrepreneurs, lawyers, I think we get this image that you have to be this 7-figure, 8-figure, blah, blah, blah. People are just throwing stuff out there, it's like having the cars or the big house or the whatever. But like, what does that really look like? If it gives you happiness, by all means, great. But, if that means you never see your family and you never can have a vacation, or you're always, tethered to the job, like you've got to really think, what does that mean? And that's why I also try to be aware of the word grow when I talk about like the law firm, because I'm thinking maybe just being like your story with the business owner who wanted the $500,000 and took 100,000 salary, and she's happy with that, and because a lot of times when you grow, you get more problems, more headaches, but if you can crack the code and make it work, and all of that, more power to you. But I mean, I agree with all of this. I think we have to reflect, we have to evaluate. Some of the things that got us to where we are not necessarily the things that are going to take us to the next level or where we want to go later on. Maybe we just did stuff out of survival or habit, or we never questioned it. And I think, when we're truly growing, we need to evaluate these things and stop, reflect, breathe, and really question why we're doing what we're doing. And if we really do consider it success, and are we finding and what our North Star is, and then And then once we've had that moment to reflect, or I mean, it's probably more than a moment, but then we can try to stay true to what we've come to realization in all of our decisions and our boundaries. Yeah.
Then we can start programming our brain so our brain will act according to what we really want and where we really want to go. Because as you know, good people are everywhere and bad people are everywhere. If you focus on bad people only, you will have this doomsday feeling of the world because you will not be able to notice the good things. And it's all about noticing and retraining your brain. That's why there's a really phenomenal study, not one, but multiple, on how plasticity changes your brain where you're in gratitude and how different parts of your brain light up and how much calmer you are, how much less prone to stress you are, how to build the gray matter in your brain that creates resilience and what to do. And what we're describing here is the typical language, but underneath all of what we've said are brain structures that need to be addressed. Just wanting and thinking without really kind of going down to the nitty gritty of your brain is not going to work. That's why my lovely friends, therapists, I love you all. But often people go to therapy for years and they're still where they were. We need to literally change the biological, how your brain functions, use the neuroplasticity to our advantage whenever possible. So this can be a permanent change, not just temporary change of behavior. And that takes time.
And being purposeful about it and aware. And I love this. This is really great message to a lot of our listeners who are at different spaces in their journey. And I think we all can learn something from today's discussion. And I'm definitely gonna have to listen to it again.
Are you feeling overwhelmed by all the different things you have to do to run a law firm? Well, you're not alone. So many law firm owners are in the same boat. That's where Staffy steps in. More than 90 firms just like yours are leaning on their bilingual virtual staff for legal, administrative, marketing, and client-facing work, plus their full HR support. I currently have 11 team members with Staffy across my own firm and Power Strategy Group, and it's been a total game changer. Schedule a free initial consultation at staffy.cc, that's stafi.cc, and use the code RUBY, RUBY, for $500 off.
Dominica, I ask a couple of questions of my guests, and so it's sort of my rapid fun fact questions. And I know that we would love to continue our discussion, but at some point we have to part ways and we can come back another day and talk. But what is your favorite board game?
I love that question. And because I don't want to go with what everybody says, I'm going to say I don't like board games.
What?
And there's not one that I like. I do love games that require movement.
Okay.
I do love games that require cards, but I can't play them because I do have an addictive personality. So if I would probably start gambling, and we're not doing that. So we're staying totally away from anything that can trigger those behaviors. And I enjoy games that are physical. So volleyball, biking and things of that nature, or scavenger hunts. I love scavenger hunts.
Oh, okay. No, yeah, I take this question very loosely. So if it's more of like a game thing you like to do, but I love board games with my family. So I'm selfishly crowdsourcing what do people do. So
As you should.
All right. What do you consider your superpower?
My superpower is understanding complex things and making them very simple.
Awesome. That is a very tough skill and very valuable. What would you consider is a habit that contributes to your success?
The habit that contributes to my success, there are plenty, but I think the most important one is this little voice that I've created in my head. When Gazilda, which is my Debbie Downer personality, comes out, I literally talk to her and I'm like, I'm not giving up. So I might fall, I might cry, I might fall apart. And then I get up every time. And I believe I taught myself that. And that became a habit that we don't stay down for too long. And there's always a way out. And it's a connection of habit and way of thinking.
That is so important. And I think especially there's a lot of there's a lot of changes going on in the economy. There's a lot of changes in the practice of law. There's a lot of changes in various practices of law, i.e. mine. And so there's a lot going on, and change can be unsettling, but we have to stay positive and look for the opportunity. What would you consider as a favorite book or podcast you'd like to share?
So my all-time favorite podcast is Dr. Huberman. There's hands down Huberman Lab. Anything brain related. What's fascinating about the way, his podcasts are like lectures. So I listen to his podcast and take notes, and then I download the studies that he recommended to read and I read them. So that's my favorite podcast. It's fascinating. He brings people I would never have access to, and the way they describe, especially things related to brain, because that's my specialty. Oh, they're just fascinating. And most people probably will think, I'm a weirdo, and I'm definitely one of those who loves science and makes it. I love science that I can use and make the world a better place. I don't care about the science that is not translatable to improving lives of people. That one others are fascinated with.
Well, awesome. We covered a lot of territory, I think, between ADHD and entrepreneurs, but sometimes it might not be, and what to do to try to eliminate what before those factors or symptoms before you actually get tested. And then also other strategies to protect our mental energy and avoid burnout, but evaluating what is our true north and how it can help guide us through our decision making. And also we've talked about like the definition of success and so much. So I really enjoyed our discussion today, and I know that it's been really helpful to others who are going to be listening to this. And how can people find you and reach out and stay connected with you?
So I can be found everywhere under my first and last name, so Dominika Staniewicz, but you can also find me under Your Brain Coach D, and that's social media, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, as well as LinkedIn. So everywhere it's either Dominika Staniewicz or Your Brain Coach D.
Awesome. And we'll definitely put that in show notes for people to find you as well. So thank you very much for our discussion today. I really appreciate your time and expertise and optimism. And we'll definitely have to stay in touch. Thanks everybody who listened, and make sure to like, subscribe, follow, tell other people about the podcast, and we'll see you next time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning in to Power Up Your Practice. I'm Ruby Powers, and it's been a pleasure sharing this time with you. We love your reviews, so if you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us one and share this podcast with someone else so that they can know what you've been learning on our show. And make sure to check out the Power Up Your Practice book. It's available in paperback and Kindle on Amazon. It's packed with 25 chapters of strategies to grow and streamline your firm. And we also have the free Power Hub community on School to keep the conversation going in between the episodes. So make sure to keep powering up your practice, and we'll see you next time.